Most times, people equate being famous with a life of luxury, never having to struggle to get by, no problems to be had. But on occasion, that's simply untrue. Celebrities are just as likely to encounter rough times as the rest of us. Some are murdered, harassed, and despite their recognizable faces, some even vanish without a trace. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at these 3 mysterious disappearances of famous people. Richey Edwards. Richey Edwards, sometimes known as Richey Manic, was the lyricist and rhythm guitarist for the band Manic Street Preachers. Manic Street Preachers is a Welsh rock band that's been active since 1986. The Manics were well known for their alternative rock sound and their leftist political stance. Edwards began as a roadie for the band, but he was soon picked up as a 4th member. It's said that when he started, he had little musical knowledge, but his contribution to the lyrics and designs of the band quickly made him the lead spokesperson for the group. In one of his most memorable moments, after a journalist asked Edwards about the band's authenticity, he carved the words "for real" into his arm with a razor blade. This later required 18 stitches to close up. Edwards was also very open about depression, having suffered it for most of his adult life. He was a self-harmer, using mostly cigarette burns and cutting. He also suffered insomnia and self-medicated with alcohol to help him sleep. Before the release of the Manics' 3rd album, The Holy Bible, in 1994, Edwards checked into both the Whitchurch Hospital and the Priory Psychiatric Hospital. After leaving the Priory, the band toured again as a whole. Edwards' last performance was at the London Astoria on December 21st, 1994. This show ended with the Manics smashing their equipment and damaging the lighting system. Not even 2 months later, on February 1st, 1995, Edwards seemingly disappeared. On this day, Edwards and the lead vocalist of the Manics, James Dean Bradfield, was supposed to fly to the United States to promote the Holy Bible. For the 2 weeks leading up to his disappearance, Edwards had been withdrawing £200 per day from his bank account. The night before, Edwards gave a friend a book called Novel with Cocaine and told her to read the introduction. The introduction of this book told the story of the author's stay at a mental institution before disappearing. Then, while staying in the Embassy Hotel in London, Edwards assembled a decorated box filled with books and videos from his belongings. He marked the box to Jo, his girlfriend who had recently separated from him. On the morning of his disappearance, Edwards left the hotel with only his wallet, car keys, and some of his prescription medicines, and his passport. Checking out at 7 a.m, he left behind his luggage and some more of his Prozac. He drove to his apartment in Cardiff, where he left his passport and medication, along with a toll booth ticket marked 255. These were the last known actions of Edwards. In the following weeks, it's said that Edwards was seen at a passport office and a Newport bus station by a fan. On February 7th, a taxi driver claims to have picked Edwards up from King's Hotel in Newport. The taxi driver said he drove Edwards all around, including to his hometown of Blackwood. While in Blackwood, the passenger thought to be Edwards stated, "This is not the place." The taxi driver later dropped him off in South Gloucestershire, at the Seven View service station. On February the 14th, Edwards' car, parked at Seven View service station, received a parking ticket. 3 days later, it was reported abandoned. The car had a dead battery, and there were signs that the car had been lived in. Inside it, there were also pictures taken of the Edwards family only days before. Severn Bridge, a known suicide spot, wasn't far from the service station, leading many to believe that Edwards may have jumped off the bridge. Since then, there's been sightings of Edwards in India, as well as different islands such as Lanzarote. The last reported sighting was in 2004, but none of these ever led to anything conclusive. The investigation was widely criticised, stating the police never took into account Edwards' mental health during the search. It wasn't until 2008 that it was revealed that the toll booth ticket was a 24-hour time format, which means that Edwards passed through the gate at 2:55 AM instead of 2:55 PM as previously thought. Although he was never found, Caitlin Moran of the Times stated that he became a cause among depressives, alcoholics, anorexics, and self-mutilators because he was the first person in the public eye to talk openly about these subjects, not with swaggering bravado and a subtext of, "Look how tortured and cool I am," but with humility, sense, and often bleak humour. Henry Hudson. Henry Hudson was a 17th century English explorer, known for exploring what is now Canada and northeastern United States. In the early 1600s, whilst attempting to find a passage in the Arctic Circle, Hudson landed where New York City currently sits. He explored the area, mainly looking to find an easier passage to Asia for the Dutch East India Company. The Hudson River, Hudson Strait, and Hudson Bay, all named for him. In 1610, unbeknownst to him, Hudson set off for his final voyage. Sailing for the Virginia Company and the British East India Company, Hudson took a ship called the Discovery for another attempt at finding the northern passage to Asia. On May 11th, the ship reached Greenland. By June, the ship had made it to the Hudson Strait. Following the strait, they had made it to Hudson Bay by August. At first, there was excitement from the ship. To them, finding this great bay meant they'd finally found the passage. By November, the ship became trapped in ice, and the crew had to hunker down on shore for the winter. In the spring of 1611, Hudson planned to take the ship further into the bay, still hoping to discover the passage. By this time, however, most of Hudson's crew were ready to return home. By June, the crew couldn't take it any longer and staged a mutiny. Stories of this mutiny are very skewed, as the only ones who were alive to tell the tale were the mutineers or those that went along with them. The most reliable source of the tale is from the ship's navigator, Abercrombie Prickett. In a journal he kept, he said that the main mutineers were Henry Green and Robert Juet. According to Prickett, Hudson and his son, along with 7 men, were put into a small open boat and set adrift. The journal goes on to say they were left with some clothing, powder and host, some food, and other miscellaneous items. Hudson and those with him attempted to row after the Discovery. After some time, the mutineers grew tired of the chase and opened the sails, easily leaving the small boat behind. After many searches, Hudson and all the others in the boat were never located. Prickett's account of the mutiny is considered to be biased and isn't fully believed. There are 2 reasons for this. First of all, Green and Juet were said to be friends and extremely loyal to Hudson. And secondly, Green and Juet didn't even survive the return trip home. Surely Prickett knew the crew would have been punished for mutiny, and it would have been in his best interest to blame it on those who were dead. Some believe that Hudson was never set adrift in the boat. Bloodstains and letters detailing an escalating resentment between the captain and his crew were later discovered. But since Hudson's body was never found, it's all theories. Although the 8 of the remaining crewmen who returned were tried for mutiny, none of them were punished. It's said they held too much knowledge of the voyages and New World to execute. Their knowledge for future sea exploration made them too valuable, and no one was ever held accountable for Hudson's disappearance. Jim Sullivan. American singer-songwriter Jim Sullivan only released 2 albums before going missing in New Mexico. He is remembered for his debut album, UFO, which many people believe give hints about his mysterious disappearance. In the late 60s and early 70s, Jim and his wife Barbara were involved in the Hollywood music scene. She worked at Capitol Records, and he wrote songs and played at nightclubs around the Los Angeles area. After becoming a fixture at the Raft Club in Malibu, Sullivan made friends with Lee Majors, Lee Marvin, and Harry Dean Stanton. He even played an extra in the film Easy Rider. His friends later helped fund his debut album. This album came to be known as UFO. After UFO and a follow-up album didn't provide the success he was seeking, Sullivan fell into a life of alcohol and his marriage began to fail. In 1975, Sullivan then decided to go to Nashville to attempt to break into the music scene there. On March 5, 1975, only a day after Sullivan had left, Barbara received a phone call from him. Barbara says he told her that he was all right. She found that to be strange, as it had only been a day since he had left. She noted when the call continued strangely. When Barbara asked for more details about this trip, Sullivan said, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Sullivan ended the call shortly after, assuring Barbara he would call her from Nashville. When that didn't happen, the family began searching. After some phone calls, it was determined Sullivan wasn't in any jail, although one trooper stated he belonged there. After 15 hours of driving, Sullivan had been pulled over for erratic driving. Although he was thought to be under the influence, he passed a sobriety test. Sullivan then checked into the La Mesa Hotel located in Santa Rosa. Reports state that Sullivan didn't sleep in the room, but was seen buying vodka in the town store. The next time he was seen was at a ranch 26 miles away from the hotel. Sullivan was reportedly seen walking away from his car. When his car was searched, it was found that Sullivan had left everything: money, clothes, a box of his records, and most notably, his guitar. Those close to Sullivan said the guitar was a dead giveaway. They said he wouldn't go anywhere without it. When the police investigation turned up nothing, 2 of Sullivan's brothers and some locals tried to locate him as well. When they also turned up nothing, that's when the theories started. These range from mafia involvement to extraterrestrials. In 2010, a group of people, including a filmmaker and a private detective, went back to Santa Rosa to trace Sullivan's last steps. At one stop, they were told Sullivan asked for directions back to California, but there were no other leads. A reissue of his UFO album outdid any sales it had done while Sullivan was alive. When it was released in 2010, it gained a great interest in a late-night paranormal radio show. Of course, theories poured in. Barbara Sullivan embraced the idea that he was abducted by extraterrestrials. One of her sons, Chris, said it was easier for her than contemplating the alternatives. He went on to say she was convinced he was up in the stars somewhere, waiting for her. So what do you make of these mysterious disappearances? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.